So this week, the first code we did was for an RGB LED. This LED has three different LEDs in it, one for red, one for green, and one for blue. And then there are three 330 ohm resistors. Each of the pins is plugged into a port that is PWM or pulse width modulation. So based on the code that we put in, we can tell each LED to have a certain brightness, and that will give us each individual color. So all together, we can change it to pretty much any color that we want. So initially with this one, I didn't have too much trouble with the code or the circuitry. This one was actually fairly easy for me to figure out. I finally was able to download the guide from the CD that came with my kit, and that really helped a lot. The only issue I had was connecting my ground power right next to the cathode instead of on the other side in column E. And then I realized what I did and just switched it to column F, and then everything worked perfectly. The next one was the driving multiple LEDs. For this one, it wasn't difficult to set up. It was just a lot to set up, especially because the resistors are so pliable. It was kind of difficult to get them all in. As you can see here, this one I kind of struggled with a little bit. It's very bent. Each of my 8 LEDs, I used 3 red, 3 yellow, and 2 green. And then we had 330 ohm resistors again, and then everything is plugged into a port that is also pulse width modulation. So the first one was just one right after the other. So each LED lights up after the one previous to it, and then it goes all the way back down. So if we look at the code for that, there are 2 different ways that this one happens. There's the one after another no loop. They use an array for the LED pins, and then the delay time is 100 milliseconds. And so we turn them all on 100 milliseconds after another, and then they go off 100 milliseconds after another. So this was the longhand way of writing it out, having an individual line, an individual digital write for each one. Then the one after another loop is the exact same, and instead they used for code and the array instead of just writing out an individual code for every single pin. So that helps when you do the array. You might as well just go ahead and use the for, and then it has, as long as everything keeps happening, then that's what happens. And then when that no longer happens, it goes to the next one, which would be once it reaches 7 in the index, and then it turns down to low or turns the LED off. So the next one is one at a time. And this one, instead of the LED staying on like it does in the other one, it immediately turns back off. So in the code for this one, you can see that we're using the LED pins index or array. And then the delay time is 100 milliseconds again. We've got another for code here. And then it's just saying that it turns on, starts with 0 in the array and goes all the way through 7. And it turns it on high, waits 100 milliseconds, and then turns it off, and then repeats all the way through the array. The next is ping pong. For this one, it just bounces back and forth between the 2 outside LEDs. So for the code here, we have another delay time of 100 milliseconds. And so it goes all the way through the array this time, 0 through 7, and turns it on high, and then 0 through 7 turns it on low, and then same thing here. So this one looks very similar to the one after another loop. So the difference here is these all turn on high, but there's nothing to turn them back on low after. But if we look at the ping pong loop, it's high and then low immediately after before it gets to the next for code. All right, the next one is the marquee. And this one has 2 LEDs lighting up at the same time. And it's kind of like you'd see LEDs outside on a sign, like at a movie theater or something like that. So for marquee, the delay time here is 200 milliseconds. And then it starts with 0 in the array, but then it starts with 0 plus 4, so it starts at 4. So each one is they're 4 LEDs apart every time. And so it turns on high, waits for 200 milliseconds, and then turns it on low, and then continues through the array where there are 4 apart each time. The next one is random LED. This one has no pattern to which LED turns on. It's just a random LED. So looking at the code, it's random anywhere 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 in the array with a delay time of 100 milliseconds. So that's what the index has been set at. LED pins index, turns it on high, waits 100 milliseconds, and then turns it off. And it can pick any LED in the array 0 through 7, which would be 8 different LEDs. All right, so for the next one, I attempted to just do 2 RGB LEDs at the same time. And I just copied the code from the LED, first RGB LED, and then just changed which ports I had the second one in. I renamed them by what color wire I was using, and then just referenced the original RGB LED to remember that orange was red, yellow was green, and black was blue. So you can see here in the code, I have the original blue, green, and red in 3, 5, and 6, and then I have orange, yellow, and black in 8, 10, and 11. And so if we look here, blue was in 3, so that means that black would also need to be in 8 because they're in the same. I didn't notice this the first time around when I was doing code, so I went back and changed it in everything else in the code and didn't realize that I forgot to change it up here also. So technically, blue would have been the same as black. Green should have been the same as yellow, which it was because it's in the middle. And then red would have been the same as orange. So I had orange and black flipped. I went back and changed it in everything else you could see down here, but I forgot to change it up top. So when you look, I don't know how much of a difference that made, but the LEDs were never in sync with each other. I was really trying to get them to be the same color at the same time, but that did not happen. So here's my second attempt when I realized that my code was messed up. But they were still not in sync, and the left LED was mostly just lighting up primary colors, and I couldn't really get the in-between spectral colors. All right, so then I decided that I would take the fading code that I found and tried to add that to my RGB LED. So looking at the code, I started with defining my blue, green, and red LED and which pin they were in. I had my setup, set everything up as an output and which one I wanted to be on high and low. So then I copied and pasted the RGB LED code and then also add the fading code. So with the fade values. Okay, so at first it didn't really work. I played a lot with how I arranged things in the code and the delay times. And here was the first attempt. The first attempt, it was really just taking a long time to change between colors. And I didn't ever really notice the LED going out completely like it should have with the fading code. All right, so here was my second attempt. So we can see it starts off with red. I got it to change a little faster this time between colors, but I still never really noticed the LED going out like it should have with fade. All right, and here was my third attempt at doing the RGB LED fading. You could tell here I got it to move a lot faster, and you can also tell where the LED shuts off for a very quick second. But it's hard to tell if it's actually getting dimmer or not, just with the colors changing. So here's the fourth attempt. I did it from above so you can see it a little better of when it goes out. There's just a quick blip when the LED turns off, and then it picks up in the code right where it left off. And that was this week's challenges.